Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
April 30th, 1975. 50 years ago, the world watched in disbelief as Saigon fell, a moment that reverberated far beyond the borders of Vietnam. But the impact of that day was also deeply felt here, in Central Texas, the Brazos Valley, and all over our state. This program tells the personal stories of our neighbors, local individuals whose lives were forever touched by the Fall of Saigon, from those who served in the conflict and witnessed the chaos firsthand, to the sights and sounds that have been created after the Fall of Saigon 50 years ago. Through their voices, we uncovered the direct connections between a faraway war and the lives lived right here. Hear the accounts of Texans who were part of the war on the ground and in the air, the agonizing decisions they faced, and the indelible marks left on their hearts. Discover the journeys of those who served in Vietnam, came home to very different lives, and the challenges and triumphs of building those new lives while honoring their past. This is their story, their memories of a world in turmoil, their acts of compassion, and their resilience in the face of profound change. We explore the local legacy of a global event, revealing how the Fall of Saigon shaped the lives and the landscape of Central Texas, the Brazos Valley, and our state. Stories of impact on Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
Welcome to Lone Star Echoes. It's been 50 years since the Fall of Saigon and the end of the Vietnam War, perhaps one of the most controversial wars fought in American history. The United States and some historians continue to grapple with its legacy decades later. I speak with the family of a late Vietnam veteran who shares why a large part of that controversy still holds lasting impacts today. Right in the heart of East Waco, you'll stumble upon one of the most eclectic yards in the entire neighborhood, decorated with art pieces and embellishments that bring color and life to an otherwise mundane street.
It's relaxing.
It's the home of Shirley Sims, widow of Vietnam veteran Sergeant Louis Sims. I spent an afternoon with Shirley, and she welcomes me into her very unique home.
You like it?
Inside this home, the memory of her late husband are everywhere you look.
Still missing me every day, but it's just like his presence still here because it's where he resides. And the pictures and everything.
And on full display hangs his service uniform.
A few of the proud Marines.
Louis was 18 when he enlisted in the Marines, served in Vietnam for 4 years, earning 26 medals during his tour, including a Purple Heart.
He got wounded in action on Christmas Day.
When his only son, Louis Sims Jr., tells me about his father, it's clear that they shared a special bond.
Every time he had a chance, he would just talk to me about life.
And the war stories his father kept from his mother, Louis shared with his son.
My daddy said we weren't winning. If we weren't getting killed in the field, if they weren't getting killed leisure time, they were just getting picked off. And they did not know the area.
The U.S. Armed Forces were in uncharted territory, but refusing to back down, they deployed an herbicide called Agent Orange. It was used to kill the leaves on trees and dense jungle that provided cover for the enemy. Over 19 million gallons of Agent Orange were sprayed all over Vietnam, spanning 20 million acres from 1962 to 1971.
You knew at some point that it's going to get bad. With that Agent Orange.
The USDA discovered its toxicity in 1969, but the damage was already done. Exposure to it has been linked to 50 diseases and illnesses, affecting over 2 million people. It has also resulted in death. 300,000 U.S. veterans have died from Agent Orange. Louis was one of its victims, his wife and son recounting the years he suffered from body aches and pains throughout his entire life. And at the age of 71, he was diagnosed with bone cancer from exposure to Agent Orange.
Was I mad? Yeah. What can you do? You fought for us. You fought for your country. You made it. But the result is you catch something.
And he died less than a year later.
My daddy always been my best hero, my best friend, period. You know, he always tell me a lot of stuff, and so when he but yeah, he been my best friend for real. He been my best friend, and
Why are you getting emotional?
yeah. He always been.
As you can see, some old wounds never truly heal.
Imagine there's no country.
In an anti-war protest and a call for peace, here is music legend John Lennon live on stage for the last time, performing his hit song Imagine, less than 2 weeks before the fall of Saigon on April 30th, 1975.
You may say I'm a dreamer.
As we reflect on the Vietnam War 50 years later, and in the case of Agent Orange, it's hard to ignore the deep consequences our actions have played out decades later. But if we can all learn from our mistakes, imagine the possibilities.
The repercussions of Agent Orange are far more widespread than we can imagine. According to the Vietnamese government, as many as 400,000 Vietnamese people suffered death or permanent injury brought on by Agent Orange. Scientists say toxic byproducts are still embedded in Vietnam's ecosystem today. Babies born with birth defects 3 generations later. Another Central Texan who proudly served his country in Vietnam is John Kerr. In his own words, we'll hear how the fall of Saigon impacted his life. And later, we'll visit the Waco Vietnam Veterans Memorial and learn why those who served believe their service was different from vets who served in other wars.
Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
Many veterans served in Vietnam before the fall of Saigon in 1975. One of them is Hewitt attorney John Carr, who served in Vietnam from January 1969 to January 1970. Here's his story on how his service in Vietnam and the fall of Saigon shaped his life.
I was honored to serve my country.
John Carr did as a first lieutenant in the Army's Special Forces Group, commonly known as the Green Berets.
I was a first lieutenant in the 5th Special Forces Group. The 5th Special Forces Group had a series of camps along the western Vietnam border from the DMZ down to almost down to Saigon.
Here's Carr in his first combat patrol out of Camp Doc Siang near the Vietnam-Cambodia-Laos border. He vividly recalls his experience there.
It was warm. You know, it was pretty hot. In Special Forces, you have a 1-week combat orientation training that gets you ready for going out to your camp. Once you get your feet on the ground, you kind of get acclimated to the whole scenario, and you just want to go out and make contact with the enemy, you know, and do your job.
Carr stressed doing the job could be gut-wrenching.
Things got hard. I was at Doc Siang for about 3 months. I was actually on watch at night, the night that Ben Het got attacked by 3 Russian PT-76 tanks. Shortly after that, I got sent down to Ben Het, and that was the most significant combat duty I had.
Carr shared when he returned from Vietnam in 1970, there was no hero's welcome home for himself and some others he knew.
I can give you an example of a friend of mine who was also in Special Forces. When he landed in Oakland, somebody came up to him and shot him in the belly, and he said, "You baby killer." So when I came home, There was no band playing. There was no welcoming committee. People looked at me like I was some sort of a freak show. That was very disheartening.
As we, the press and the Americans evacuating, made our drive through Saigon to the American embassy, people, mostly families, pleaded with us for a seat.
Carr remembers the reports of the fall of Saigon in 1975. He says it impacts him to this day.
All of the lives of Americans, the 50-something thousand, who went there to do their job and to bring victory, was thrown away, just cast away. As to us who were there, it'll always be a significant event that it fell. Yes, that's it.
Even 50 years after the fall of Saigon, the impact of the Vietnam War still runs deep for many veterans. In this story, we meet one of them, a man who is not only serving his country, but serves to help the National Vietnam War Museum, located about an hour west of Fort Worth. He shares how serving in the war shaped his life and how he has found ways to heal, grow, and keep moving forward.
I served in Vietnam in '68.
Meet Wayne Parham, who has some stories to tell about his service.
I earned the 2 Purple Hearts, this one from a head injury, and the other one that I spent 2 months in the hospital with, being ambushed. What I'm most proud of, all this injury part.
One of his most impactful stories is about how this hole happened to this helmet. His helmet, what he calls his steel pot, in the heat of battle.
That was not fastened when I dove to help a friend who was under fire. And when I dove, the helmet slid back on the back of my head. So when they started firing at me from the ground, the trajectory would have been up. So it creased this particular round, or piece of shrapnel, whatever it was, from a grenade or a rocket. It come up through and penetrated, cut the liner, as you can see right here, it's cut in 2, and went through from the inside out.
And that's what that big hole is?
That's what the big hole is right here. It went in through the inside, and then when it comes out, it flares. It does the same thing with a body.
Wayne survived and returned home. 2 of his fellow soldiers did not. Emotions overtake Wayne as he recalls these memories here at the National Vietnam War Museum.
It's hard to this day. Not a day goes by that I don't think about all of them that were killed. They're up there on that wall, on our little half replica wall. And I come out here several times a year, especially New Year's Day, Christmas Day, and on their day of death. Yes, Vernon. We found him here on 32W West.
On this day, he's looking for, and he found, another friend and comrade lost in Vietnam.
I miss you. I miss you a lot. We shared so many times together. His dreams in high school, his dreams to get back to his girlfriend.
Vivid memories of the people he served with. The memories Wayne brought home and still lives with today. Some good, some not so good. Wayne recognized a long time ago he has post-traumatic stress syndrome, or PTSD, from his time in battle 57 years ago. He says he knows when it starts.
Even last night, I'm barely asleep, and all of a sudden, I can feel it. I can always feel it coming on. It starts in my head, and it gets hot, and it starts working down. But I've learned in PTSD group therapy at the VA, which is wonderful, we've learned to combat that by getting up. Don't remain in bed. Don't remain in that anxiety moment. Get up and go call somebody. I have them all. I have 10 of them right there.
From coping to thriving, Wayne understands the impact of the Fall of Saigon in 1975 and stands proud of his time of service.
We veterans as a whole, I'd like people to know that those that were drafted just went to do their duty.
Wayne Parham also earned 2 Army commendations during his service. He was also a coach and teacher for many years after he completed his military service. Well, a place where military service is recognized is at the National Vietnam War Museum, and it's right here in Texas. It's also where we learn why history and Saigon's fall continues to shape its future. We have that story next. We'll tell you the story of a Brazos Valley soldier who witnessed the brutality of the Vietnam War and whose likeness lives on in a park dedicated to honor military service.
Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
For nearly 2 decades, the Waco Vietnam Veterans Memorial has stood as a tribute to those who represented the Waco community abroad. 50 years after the fall of Saigon, Vietnam vets recount why the history surrounding their service is different than the rest.
Along the banks of the Brazos lies years of sacrifice, forever entrenched in Waco history.
I think that's important. I think that's a good way to tell their story.
Preserving the patriotism of Vietnam veterans since being dedicated in 2004.
That's a part of just being a good old red, white, and blue-blooded American and being patriotic and loving your country. That element just, it may get damaged from time to time, but it never goes away. It never dies out.
From the very beginning, when troops first deployed to Vietnam in 1965, before the bloodshed.
I wrote a blank check to the country, said, here, take my life, take whatever you want. Because there was no thought about honor or glory, any of that stuff. It was just serving my country.
To the conflict that arose throughout the 8 years of direct involvement of the United States.
In retrospect, we kind of feel like it was pointless. I don't think that they had our best interests at heart. I'm not sure why we were there, even to this day.
Encapsulated with the honor bestowed on those that lost their lives in combat.
I was relieved that it was over. You know, obviously, no more killing, no more loss of lives.
The 50th anniversary of the Fall of Saigon brings a split sentiment between those that laid down their lives on the battlefield.
If you don't want us to do our job, don't put ourselves at risk. And that's the thing I try to make sure that people understand today. Because we haven't learned any lessons from Vietnam as a result of the mistakes we made there.
Looking back on it now, we didn't go about it the right way. Not that lives were wasted or that we wasted our time, but we learned a lot.
Breeding discomfort with the sentence, "Thank you for your service," 50 years later.
I'll say, well, I'm sorry we lost, and my wife will always rib me about that because as a Vietnam veteran, my personal opinion is we lost that war.
I'm uncomfortable with that because it just seems kind of shallow. You know, for us Vietnam vets, it just rings kind of hollow.
Through all the controversy surrounding the war in Vietnam, on this 50th anniversary, Waco Veterans Memorial stands the test of time to honor those that serve their country.
I like the plaque that, you know, just for those who've given their all, you know, that some gave all, and we need to remember that.
Concept for the Waco Vietnam Veterans Memorial was inspired by the memorial in Washington, D.C., stemming from a visit from founder Manuel Sustaita. It began in 1988 with a rededication in 2010, paving the way for the remembrance of Vietnam veterans to be immortalized in Waco's history forever. Well, did you know that the National Vietnam War Museum is based here in Texas? In this 50th anniversary of the Fall of Saigon, the museum offers a powerful look at that pivotal moment in history. In this story, we'll meet the museum's founder, learn what inspired its establishment, and explore how the Fall of Saigon continues to help shape its mission today.
Welcome to the National Vietnam War Museum, and follow me to see the secrets.
Jim Messinger knows all about these secrets, which are on display as soon as you walk through the door. Some examples: a utility truck with its armament and specs, all detailed in a compelling display. A giant 7 by 12 foot quilt with 68 photos, all people who served in Vietnam. And a training helicopter, something near and dear to Messinger.
What kind of memories does this one bring back?
Oh, the greatest memory of all, I almost failed flight school because of this helicopter.
Yes, Messinger was a helicopter pilot, did tours in Vietnam in 1967 through 68, and again in September of 1970 through September of 1971.
Helicopter pilot was a big thing. I wanted to be in the Air Force, and they required a college degree. I was majoring in women and beer at the time, and my grade point average was slipping. If it went below 2.0, you're going to get drafted. And I was at 1.8 when I headed for to sign up for the Army. I asked the Air Force guy if they were still requiring a college degree, and he said, yep. So the Army recruiter was right next door to him, and he says, we've got this helicopter program. All you need is a high school diploma. Well, I got 3 years of college under my belt, and I found out they weren't going to give me a degree for my major. So I said, it's okay, sign up.
Messinger says it was fellow helicopter pilots who trained at what was then Fort Walters near Mineral Wells who met to form a local support organization, which morphed into something else.
A guy named Jim, not me, raises his hand and says, let's build a museum. And that's how it kicked off. Didn't know anything about what we were doing or how to do it. We just started down the road. We knew we had to raise money. Today we have a 10,000 square foot, 2-story building, and we are building another building right now. So in a couple of years we'll have 2 of these, and then we'll be talking about what the third one's going to be.
For Jim Messinger, building the museum was his second love. Flying helicopters was his first.
Nothing more fun than flying helicopters, and they really are fun. When I went to Vietnam, I was 21 years old, and my first job was to fly around in my helicopter and let people shoot at me. Anybody out there want that job? Let me know.
Across from the training helicopter, another display that touches Messinger's heart in a different way.
Yeah. Evacuation from Saigon.
A display that features a video surrounding the Fall of Saigon in the spring of 1975.
My big thing is this display behind me, the evacuation of Saigon. And what I'm going to teach people that come here, I'm going to teach them about their government. It's the only war that has been blamed on the soldiers. The soldiers don't do it. The government tells us to go to war. And unfortunately, the government wanted to run the war. They don't know the first thing about running war, so it was messy over there.
Much of that messiness and history on display as you stroll through the museum's decorated hallways and its impacts on all people involved.
Yeah, I'm out here at least 2 days a week, and sometimes more, and it's very emotional for me. Still.
The National Museum of the Vietnam War is just located east of Mineral Wells, Texas. That's about 45 minutes west of Fort Worth. For complete information about the museum and its exact location, go to fox44news.com and find the link to the story. We visit a piece of the past where thousands of helicopter pilots trained, impacting the Vietnam War. And it's not that far away from Central Texas and the Brazos Valley. That story next. And later, a peaceful place for veterans whose final resting place is designated for those who lived a life of service.
Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
Let's step back in time to Fort Walters, Texas, the launch pad where over 40,000 helicopter pilots learned to fly during the Vietnam War. One of the pilots who trained there and then was an instructor there is a familiar face. That's Jim Messinger, one of the founders and current treasurer who we introduced you to earlier in this special program.
Okay, the large building on the left.
Jim Messinger, the founder of the National Vietnam War Museum, reminisces on where he lived while stationed on Fort Walters in the 1960s. Not much left of what was then living quarters. There are other signs of what was before Fort Walters was deactivated in 1975. Stairs leading to what were buildings. Foundations of buildings long gone. Building after building, many in advanced stages of decay. It's all tucked into pockets of what is now the Walters Industrial Park, which has reminders of the significance at the gates.
I was on a committee that built up the front gate, rebuilt the front gate, and we maintained that front gate as it was during Vietnam. You'll get to see it. It's got a Huey and it had the 2 helicopters that we trained in.
Messinger says Fort Walters was once a part of Camp Walters.
Camp Walters was the largest infantry replacement depot in World War II. It was gigantic, and after the war, that disappeared very quickly. The Air Force dropped in that part of that later on for a little while. One of the good things they did was build a new airport for Mineral Wells, and then they left.
Then the U.S. Army came in and established Fort Walters on a portion of Camp Walters as the primary helicopter training post for the Vietnam War, which it did until 1973, before the post's deactivation in 1975. Messinger says he and many of his fellow helicopter pilots have wonderful memories of their time here.
The camaraderie, all of us went through basic training and came straight here. There were some prior service guys that got in on it, but most of us went to basic training, came here to learn how to fly helicopters, and we're going to be warrant officers.
Then there's a different kind of nostalgia, remembering what was and is no more.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Camp Walters is pretty well 99% gone. Fort Walters still has some of our barracks buildings that we lived in. They were made out of concrete, and they're still out there and look good. Facilities for flying anything have been destroyed pretty much. It's just a bunch of junk. It's just a deserted fort now.
For a complete look at the history of Fort Walters, you can go to the National Museum of the Vietnam War website. You can find the link to this story on fox44news.com. We're reflecting on history at One Bell County Memorial. We'll find a young boy, an American flag, and a pool of tears with a powerful message. That story is next. And later, this Montgomery County man may have lost his legs in Vietnam, but he never lost his will to live or his love of service.
Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
As we continue to remember those who fought in Vietnam and return home changed forever, we must also remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice and died for our country. During the Vietnam War, more than 58,000 Americans lost their lives, and the final resting place for many is at veteran cemeteries across the country. The Central Texas State Veteran Cemetery in Killeen is the final resting place for about 500 Texans who fought in Vietnam. This 174-acre cemetery opened on January 4th, 2006, and is specifically designed and designated for those serving in the military, eligible veterans and their family members. It's the largest and busiest veteran cemetery in the Lone Star State. Since opening, it's where more than 15,000 veterans and their family members have been buried. In College Station, a memorial of a Huey helicopter with soldiers nearing a dangerous landing zone known as a Hot LZ can be found. This memorial honors all Vietnam War veterans and illustrates the importance of rotary wing air crews during the Vietnam War. Prominently featured on the chopper is a sculpture of Brazos Valley resident John Velasquez, who served in Vietnam. He was a combat veteran who served in the U.S. Army Infantry from 1967 to 1968. While serving in Vietnam, Velasquez saw some of the nation's most brutal battles between the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. In Bell County, there is a reflecting pool with a young boy standing in the middle, holding a folded American flag under his arm. The child is crying as he salutes a kneeling bugler. The memorial is located in Temple on the north lawn of the municipal building. Besides honoring those who served during the Vietnam War, the Pool of Tears Memorial also pays tribute to veterans of all wars. An inscription on the memorial, besides speaking of sacrifice and endurance, goes on to remind others that, quote, they will not be forgotten and that their memory will live in each generation. Another place where memories of service will live on forever is in Conroe, Texas. Next, we'll visit the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Park, where the goal is to honor, educate, and inspire the next generations. And not far from the park is the Honor Cafe, where history comes to life. Everywhere you look, the men and women who proudly fought and served their country are remembered and honored.
Fox 44 News brings you this special Lone Star Echoes, Saigon's Untold Stories.
Jimmy Edwards, a proud U.S. Marine and Vietnam War veteran, embodies the true meaning of sacrifice. Wounded in combat, he paid a heavy price in service to his country, but he never lost his spirit.
In August of 1969, in a Vietnam area called Arizona Territory, nicknamed Booby Trap City, Jimmy Edwards and his unit prepared for a night ambush during Operation Hastings.
We were in an ambush and the battle was on. And I got hit by a 122 millimeter rocket, which immediately caused both me to lose both legs. They were gone.
Jimmy's fight or flight mode was triggered.
I rolled over, tied one leg off to keep me from bleeding to death. And I had a web belt. I turned it over and tightened them up. Corpsman got to me, hit me with morphine, and we went from there.
Back home, a knock at the door delivered news that would change everything. And as Jimmy says, in the Marine Corps, some messages are too heavy for paper.
When the captain and the sergeant arrived at my parents' home, see, in the Marine Corps, they went to your home. They just didn't send you a letter or a telegram. It said that I had lost both legs in Vietnam, and it was called a field traumatic amputation.
Then, in a room full of survivors, it was time to start healing and lifting each other up.
I was in a barracks that was predominantly made up of amputees and burn victims. And we were all there together, and we helped each other.
And with the help he received, Jimmy gained confidence and made a promise to himself.
I had vowed that I'd never ever come home until I walked. I wasn't coming home in a wheelchair, I wasn't coming home in a hospital bed, I wasn't going to the VA hospital, I was going to come home.
And when he finally made it home, his homecoming wasn't quiet. Why? Because of the people from his hometown.
When I came home, I stepped into the waiting, greeting arms of about 300 Montgomery County residents, Conroe residents, classmates, friends.
While 55 years have gone by, some memories never really leave.
Some days it seems a long, long time ago, and some days, as I sometimes reminisce about it, it seems like yesterday. There are certain areas of it. What's strange about the human body and the human mind is I forget some of the tragedy of it.
Though Jimmy can't forget losing his legs, he instead chooses to remember what he calls the funny parts.
The camaraderie and the party and the gathering and us talking and us being together, a fellowship as Marines. And some of them are horrors. I guess the human brain just pulls it back so you don't have to live with it every day. My basic thoughts is I did my job, I did my duty, I served my country, I survived it, and I came home.
Jimmy said it's easier for soldiers and Marines to keep it simple.
We don't sit around and debate the philosophy of the political ramifications of the Saigon government and its relationship to President Johnson. I mean, we're trying to figure out where we're going to eat next, how we're going to stay warm, and how we're going to stay alive.
And Jimmy believes keeping veteran stories alive is the best way to teach other generations about the Vietnam War.
I give a lot of speeches, and the best speeches that seem to be received by most people is when I tell stories. And that is what it is, when you sit in a small group.
After returning from war, Jimmy knew sitting wasn't for him. He earned a political science degree from Sam Houston State University and was elected the Texas House at 24 years old, serving from 1973 to 1981.
This Marine's service to his country and fellow Americans didn't end there. Jimmy later served the citizens of Montgomery County as judge from 1983 to 1987, and he continues to honor fellow veterans by advocating for them. Currently, he's chairman of the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission, and his goal is to continue honoring, educating, and inspiring others. And Jimmy Edwards has been able to accomplish that as the chairman, being an integral part of creating the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Park. The park honors those who have served in all different facets, and it continues to add more memorials and chances to educate the public. Now let's take a ride as Jimmy Edwards takes us through the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Park.
We're planting all kind of trees and landscaping. All of this is our work right here. We started out with barren ditch, and that's how we started. We're not celebrating war. What we're doing is it's going to be for modern art. We're going to open up to everybody. This is our first memorial monument on your tour. It is dedicated to the 38 women that died in World War II that were WASP. They flew aircraft and airplanes all across this country and to Europe, getting men out of men so they could serve in combat. 38 of them were killed, shot down, crashed, etc. And so we have 38 chimes, one chime for each one of the women that were killed. And you can hear the chimes. The benches you see are sponsored by different people who have veterans in their family or they wanted to recognize somebody. Up here we have what is called the line. Veterans signing up and their name can be inscribed here. These boards are designed to be lit up during the day and lit up during the night. You can come anytime, 24/7. The park never closes. And we call this Victory Lane and Victory Road. We have Veteran of the Week. We put their names up there. When I moved from the old park down here, I promised that I would keep it intact. Well, I wanted to upgrade it, and that's what we did. But these are the names of the fallen from Montgomery County. Then next is World War I. Now you can imagine how small we were. This county was with only about 10,000 people, and that's a lot of names. Here's World War II. Then it goes on to the next war, Korea, the fallen from Vietnam, the fallen from Beirut. We had one David Brown killed, Desert Storm, and also Iraqi freedom, and also our enduring freedom. This on our right is our first responders globes, along with our first responders flag. We designed a flag for first responders. These are different memorials and globes remembering 9/11. This is our most recently installed. This star stands for WOW, Women of War. The metal has been done in navy gray so that we could simulate that. We wanted it rough with the bolts. These are going to be the plaques here that we've got here. It stands for courage, independence, for the women of war. And we're pleased, and we're going to dedicate that soon. One of these coming up in a few weeks, we'll be ready to dedicate it also. We have a good shot. You can shoot through the star, through the flag, to Mission Hall. It's peaceful here. When we built this bridge, we named it after James Dorsey, Buffalo Soldier. There'll be Indian tour, ladies and gentlemen.
The park continues to be a place to remember all those who have sacrificed their lives for our safety and freedom. Well, the Honor Cafe in Conroe, founded by Marine veteran Chris Sadler and his wife, is a military-themed restaurant serving American comfort food while honoring U.S. service members with walls of donated memorabilia.
Chris Sadler, owner of the Honor Cafe sold a business and was considering his next move.
I was praying about some stuff, and I just, God gave us this image of this veteran-centric restaurant, and the thought to honor veterans and their families every day like it's Veterans Day, and it kicked off from there.
The core mission of the cafe is to honor veterans and their families.
One of my only demands about things is that it's all genuine, because there's so many incredible stories that come in. I mean, if you give a community the opportunity to show what they're proud of, it'll happen in a heartbeat.
Sadler believes authenticity is key, and when the community is given a chance to share what matters, they show up in powerful ways. And thanks to the cafe, they have a place to gather.
There's a picture up there of a helicopter coming up above trees, and that was given to me by the son of one of our Korean War veterans named Jerry.
Sadler met Jerry when the cafe opened. Jerry had planned to gift a painting but passed on Christmas Eve. 2 weeks later, his son delivered it with its story.
He said, I have an older brother that was Army. And I said, yeah. And that's what Jerry and the family had told me. He had an older son, was Army, had been to Iraq, had been to Afghanistan. And he said, well, what we haven't told you is that, he said, my brother took his own life.
Sadler said he has thousands of stories, but he understood why this painting was especially meaningful.
Before he took his life, the VA was trying to help him, and they put him in a painting class. And he painted that picture for his father, and he gave it to him, and then a couple of days later he took his life. And Jerry had it hanging above his bed all that time, the last thing his older son had touched.
As you walk into the restaurant, you're met with the military memories of those who served their country. There are flags, photos, medals, and so much memorabilia you could spend hours exploring. The meanings behind some of the exhibits can leave you in awe after learning the symbolism behind its message. For instance, this table is set for one to honor the fallen or missing in action.
Table for one is something that we do in like formal military, like whether it be a mess night or different events that we have in a formal military event.
Each piece represents something to remember.
The glass being overturned means that their memory is with us, but they don't celebrate with us on that night. And on the plate, there's salt and there's a lemon, and the salt and the lemon represent the bitter tears of the family that misses the service member.
Sadler said some tables, for one, even have Bibles.
That's my Bible. That's my Marine Corps Bible my mother gave me. So, and I placed it there because it's an important part of my life, an important part of most people's lives when they're in the military. They become closer to God, or they become far away from God. There's no in between.
Sadler stated Marines rely on small unit tactics and often serve their entire careers with the same group.
We fight in what's called fire teams, which are 4-man teams, and then those 4-man teams are expanded through more of those teams. But how it was explained to me is if you're in a pit and you're going to fight a lion with spears, would you rather have 3 guys with you that would die for you because they're your brothers or your family, or 3 guys you've never met before?
Sadler says Marines fight not out of hate, but out of love. And love is the greatest weapon. And for this Marine, serving up meals inside his Honor Cafe is the best way to honor those who served.
Sadler also founded Honor Up, a nonprofit supporting veterans and their families through aid, mental health initiatives, and partnerships with other veteran-focused groups. We thank you for watching, and we salute all the veterans who not only served in Vietnam, but who have served and are serving in the military now. As we listen to the echoes from the past from those who call the Lone Star State home, we dedicate this program to you. Good night.